stay-at-home dad, watching Disney movies he never had. His daughter digs through all the VHS, crushing the classics in a princess dress. Informed like Scuttle, Kurt's got your ticket, making it real like Jiminy Cricket. Most are off the Captain Hook, but if the Tweedledum, he'll be taking more shots than Bambi's mom. Leaves him raised like Simba, or cracked like the beach dishes. He'll show you a whole new world, you won't need pre-wishes. Stay-at-home Disney dad.
It's the Summer of Love, Week 2. We're going through the entire Herbie collection this July and August, and Week 2 brings up the sequel, Herbie Rides Again. Feature presentation, Walt Disney Productions presents Herbie Rides Again. We get the Austin Powers music as a wrecking ball destroys an old building. Who's acting in this movie? Helen Hayes and Stephanie Powers. Stephanie Powers, the single greatest name I've ever heard in my life. Some rich guy in a top hat is watching all these buildings crumble, and he cheers. We have a sign that reads, "Future home of the Hawk Shopping Mall." He gives the throat slash, and like 3 blocks worth of buildings get detonated one after another. Intriguing beginning, for real. I'm invested. This is a fun way to start a movie. This rich guy is just bad news. He's driving around the city, pointing at all these places he wishes he could destroy to build parking lots and shopping malls. Oh ho, what a location, he says of their sports coliseum, because, you know, it'd make a great parking lot. So he owns Hawk Enterprises, a company that demolishes and builds stuff. They're about to build the world's tallest high-rise. Mr. Hawk gives a press conference to the peasants about how great the skyscraper is going to be. His handlebar mustache is a fantastic reminder that in every scene, he's a bad guy. He thanks the crowd and he's sincere about it, but then he covers his mic and tells his minions to get everyone out of here as quick as they can before they drink all his free booze. And wait, he's not sincere at all. Now he gets some bad news after everyone's gone. The building site where he just promised the new skyscraper, there's one snag. An old lady won't sell her house. She's holding up development. It's the last house that needs to go away before he can start building there, and this lady will not sell her home or leave. He tells his lawyers the problem is that they all look shady. She doesn't trust them. He needs someone stupid but looks trustworthy to talk the old lady into moving, and then suddenly his dim-witted nephew Willoughby arrives, who just finished law school, and this light bulb goes over Alonzo Hawk's evil head. Where's Herbie? Anyway, Alonzo is going to talk his idiot nephew Willoughby into talking to the old lady into giving up her house, which is actually an old fire hall. I feel like that's going to be an important date later on. Great shot of the whole area, just destroyed buildings one after another, and then the lone house standing. Willoughby rings the doorbell, and Herbie, who's parked out front, rolls over his foot. It's explained that Herbie's driver, Jim Douglas, went off to Europe and left his car with this old lady, Mrs. Steinmetz. So they connected those dots, and I appreciate that. The stereo inside the house turns itself on, and it's possessed, and it's apparently a friend of Herbie's. Out back is an old trolley car that is also possessed and also a friend of Herbie's. Okay, Grandma is polite at first, but then figures out Willoughby is from Alonzo Hawk's office and isn't happy about it. Oh man, more dots connected. This old lady, Mrs. Steinmetz, is Tennessee's mom. He went off to find himself again in the mountains. This is fun. This is good stuff. Nicole, the neighbor, comes over. She's dressed like Carmen Sandiego. She walks in and punches this guy in the jaw and tells him to get out. Then she sends this grandma upstairs to go to bed and continues to kick Willoughby out. He doesn't want to leave, and she puts up her dukes like she's going to fight him. He tells Nicole the story of the grandma and who thinks Herbie's alive, and that's proof the old lady is, quote, coming apart. She's like, oh, you think Herbie's goofy? Let's go for a ride. Now they're driving in Herbie, she's talking to Herbie, and Willoughby is like, lady, you're crazy too. So Herbie pops a wheelie and goes nuts, and he thinks it's just a trick, and she tells him, okay, you drive, and he calls Herbie stupid looking, and Herbie goes nuts again, and every time he goes nuts, the Austin Powers music starts up. Remember when Herbie tried to commit suicide in the first movie? We all gonna just not talk about that? They pass some weird medieval car group. It's like one of those medieval fairs, but with cars. There's a red knight in a car called Lancelot. The cars are jousting. So basically, the cars joust by speeding towards each other in a giant game of chicken. Herbie lets Nicole out, then enters the next race against the red knight with Willoughby still inside, who's screaming that he believes Herbie's alive. As the red knight speeds towards him, they finally swerve at the last second, and they cut to the same shot of the crowd holding up chicken signs over and over after each race. Like, what is this, Plan 9 from outer space? He says he's sorry to Nicole and Herbie, and she says, I hate men who say they're sorry. All right. He offers to take her out for a meal instead. Things are moving quickly here. Nicole is going off about all the bad things Alonzo Hawk has done in this city, and Willoughby says, I don't think my uncle would have done any of those things. And she's like, wait, that's your uncle? And she picks up a lobster, and she hits him with the lobster, and it knocks him out of the restaurant window and into the water. Herbie rides again. Nicole tucks the grandma into bed and then slides down the fire hall pole to get out of the room. That's fun. Now it's dark. We get a shot of Herbie in the dark, and the words grandma said about him, that he, quote, used to be a famous racing car, echoes through his sad head as he flashes back to all the races he used to race. The nephew is practicing his speech to tell off Uncle Alonzo because Nicole exposed who his uncle really is. He stops by the fire station to say goodbye. He's going back home to whatever state he's from, and the old lady says, oh, that's too bad. Nicole was hoping to see you again. Bing! Green light, buddy. Mr. Barnstorm, the foreman, is on the phone. It's costing Mr. Hawk 80 grand a day while his digging crew sits and waits for the signal to go ahead and start production. Willoughby calls his uncle and says, I'm leaving town, and then he gets cold feet and doesn't tell him off and pretends he's on a ship leaving for Helsinki right now. Bye, uncle! Alonzo Hawk throws a fit and says he'll get that old lady to move himself. He'll shut off her water and electricity, and he tells his men to steal her dog. They say she doesn't have a dog. He goes, how does she get around then? What? I'm so confused. She has a car, so steal her car. Here we go. Wait, he says, no, they're too stupid. They're going to bumble it, so he's going to go and steal the car himself. He's in the back seat of a car now, fashioning a coat hanger. Oh, to break into Herbie. Okay, he can't break into Herbie with his coat hanger. Herbie's pissy and starts acting up and stopping in the middle of the road now and causing a police car and a 4-car fender bender to hit each other. They go to tow Herbie because he refuses to move. Herbie causes this to all happen. Nicole is on a payphone now and says, well, Willoughby has more stuff than I thought. Who's she telling that to? She sees the nephew also talking on a payphone as well, and he's a grown man standing up to his mom for the first time in his life over the phone, and Nicole is all about that. It's nice to see Nicole has apparently had a healthy relationship or two before this movie, right? Alonzo's cronies are still trying to steal Herbie while the old lady is inside Herbie, and Herbie just starts driving up walls and stuff that sounds like a horror movie as I write it down. The car drives through a hotel. We see a man holding a giant cake as the henchmen storm past him on foot. And do I even have to tell you what happens next? Then this, like I'm not even going to talk about this green screen mess of special defects. She gets back home and Willoughby and Nicole suddenly come running outside the firehouse as soon as she pulls up, and they're like, oh hey, we weren't just having sex in your house while you were gone. She says Herbie took her for a nice drive on the bridge. Pause for laughter. She sends Nicole and Whitfield out for Wigbeal for broccoli and then tells Herbie to help push the romance between the two. I'm officially sick of that Herbie music. Herbie drives them to the beach and the henchmen pay some guy to block the only road in and out so they can't leave the beach. On the beach, Nicole says she's sorry she hit him with a lobster and tells him she can hit him back if he wants. Jesus, Herbie. He says, that's not what I had in mind, and they start making out. But then Herbie breaks it up for some reason. I'm so confused about this, what's happening here. They try to leave the beach, but the road is blocked by the guy Hawk's henchmen paid to block the road. So Herbie instead drives underwater and then drives on the water like car Jesus, and a shark follows them, and I can't. I'm just going to keep going. Herbie Rides Again. They make fun of a hippie surfer and the writer's projecting. They get back home and the house is empty. A moving truck came and took everything while they were gone. They busted to Hawk's warehouse at night to get Grandma's stuff back. This is definitely the same warehouse set they used in the Shaggy DA. They find Grandma's stuff, but Herbie and the trolley car and the stereo all start freaking out when the night watchmen come. And of course Herbie tries to kill him, like for real. Now Alonzo is dressed like Hugh Hefner and is bragging to the foreman on the phone that he can start production Monday. Cut to Herbie pushing the trolley full of all of Grandma's stuff down the road in the middle of the night, but Alonzo's men are chasing her. So Herbie goes on a rampage again and tries killing everyone. Some weird cowboy is also on the trolley with Grandma, and he's hitting on Grandma. I'm only mentioning this because it's weird, and it seems like a throwaway scene, but I bet you this character will be back later. So they get all the stuff back to Grandma's house, and it's suddenly the next morning. Grandma was asleep while the girl and the dude put the house back together. So Nicole now has to go to work after being up all night, moving furniture. She still looks fresh as a daisy and leaves. And Grandma hops in Herbie and drives away, leaving Willoughby all flustered by himself in the house. Alonzo's in his office getting massaged by his busty secretary. And he schemes a plan with her. We get a weird moment where Mr. Hawk fights with the window washer, but then it does go somewhere because Herbie drives onto the window washer platform and goes back up to the 28th floor where his office is. The dude Willoughby hangs onto the bottom as it goes up. Hawk hires a new wrecking company to demolish the house tonight, but they won't do it because he doesn't have a permit, but he convinces them to do it anyways because it's a sketchy company. The 28th floor office window is still open, so Herbie and Willoughby fill his office full of window washing fluid and then drive through his office to try to crush Hawk. And the grandmother is behind the wheel, and she's apparently now possessed with Herbie's demonic rage as well. She's all for killing this guy. Herbie chases him through his entire high-rise building and out onto the ledge of the 28th floor. Herbie's going to force this guy off the roof or off the ledge, and Grandma has to finally threaten to take Herbie to a junkyard if he can't suppress his murderous rage. So Herbie doesn't force Alonzo Hawk to either get run over on the side of this building or jump to his death. Honest to God, with a different score, this would be a horror movie. Willoughby calls the wrecker that Hawk hired and says, "There's been a change of plans. Here's the new address to demolish." Alonzo is counting sheep, and he's dreaming of... I mean, we get Herbie in Native American regalia, Herbie King Kong parody. This is nonsense. I don't know what to make of this either, folks. Alonzo gets a phone call from the wrecking crew double-checking the new address. And he's half asleep and he agrees to the address, but swerve, it's his address, and his place gets knocked down with him inside, and he's shook, and he has a come to Jesus change of heart moment after staring death in the bony face. So the next morning he calls the old lady and he's like, "Now I know what it's like to lose my house, and it made me realize that I can't knock down your house, so you win. Goodbye, have a good life." But swerve, he wasn't sincere at all, because after he hangs up, he's like, "Nope, I'm still gonna get that old lady. Let's go for the jugular. Let's just knock it down anyways. I don't care anymore." Willoughby is out on a date with Nicole again and tells her a story about how his grandpa was one of the first people to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel, and they never found his body. Nicole tries taking her pants off right there in the restaurant, but then gets a phone call from Grandma, and Grandma calls, and the old lady Steinmetz is like, "I'm not coming for lunch, so you two can be alone and have a romantic meal." And Nicole says, "Look, I've had enough of your matchmaking, and quote, if I'm ever gonna marry Willoughby, I want the satisfaction of nailing him by myself," end quote. Without Grandma? What kind of stuff happens in that fire hall, right? Turns out Grandma's having a romantic meal of her own with that cowboy guy from before I knew it was going to be a thing. Suddenly they hear machines and Hawk's men are tearing down her house anyway. Her framed ex-husband picture falls over and breaks, and the cowboy says, "A horse whipping is too good for these people." Outside, the machines are all advancing to destroy her house, and Herbie escapes into the night to get help. Hawk with a megaphone says they have 10 minutes to get their stuff and get out before they level the place. Herbie shows up at the date, so they dine and dash, and they drive back. And as they drive back, Herbie calls on an army of Volkswagens. Like all the bugs in the entire city roar to life and join his lynch mob. One gets possessed and drives away from this couple right here. And I want to know who this actress is, why she's dressed like Waldo, what shooting this one scene in Herbie Rides Again was like, and what she's doing now. At the house, Hawk gives the orders to finally tear down the house. Cowboy puts on her dead husband's fire hat and starts spraying the advancing machines with a high-pressure fire hose. They're knocking these Teamsters out of their moving vehicles with a high-pressure fire hose, and this is fun, and I'm not even going to pretend it's not. Just as the remaining machines finally prove too much for their single fire hose, Herbie and the cavalry show up, and all these Volkswagen bugs chase away the giant machines. Okay. Victorious war music. Nicole calls Mrs. Steinmetz a rascal, because it turns out she had a man with her at her home, and that's why she didn't want to come out for dinner. Herbie and his army chase down Hawk and try to run him over repeatedly as he runs into the arms of the police screaming like a crazy person. And now Nicole and the dolt are getting married, and Herbie drives the couple out of town again. So that's like the second married couple in as many movies that share the backseat while Herbie drives away, which is kind of nasty to think about it in a Titanic kind of way. Quick transition to quick credits, and that was wild. Summer of Love continues next week when Herbie makes it to Monte Carlo.
That's what I think about.
What do you think?
What we have is a concern about Curtis Anderson.
His personal appearance is not the best. I was wondering if the man has some kind of a hold over the channel that he's allowed to be employed for so long with the standards of journalism and personal appearance that he has. Thank you.